tell us more about your own coaching practice. Like, um, tell us your name again and how long you've been doing coaching and what your approach to coaching is.
Sure. My name is Cynthia Conigliaro. I'm a health and wellness coach. I've been coaching people for probably 15 years. I'm also a social worker, so I've worked with all different populations. I've done work with people in the area of weight loss to dependency, just touched upon many different issues. Usually anxiety seems to be something that most of my clients have really asked for help with. I think anxiety is on the rise in our society, and I notice it increasingly with my clients now. I work mostly one-on-one. I do have some groups and both presentations on a variety of different topics. Everything from how to eat for more energy. I work with parents with their children and how to help parents encourage their children to eat healthier. So many children in our society are not eating well. This whole mind-body connection is really important to me. So that's something I focus on a lot with my clients. So if I'm working with them around emotional issues, we'll often talk a lot about what they're putting in their body. That's a really important thing for me.
And what's the role of stress and resilience in your work?
It's an important concept. I really like to see that, the clients I'm working with are handling their stress well. I have a pretty good handle on what the early warning signs are in terms of, stress, and just really trying to help them to cope, but also, as you've talked about so many times, to thrive and to kind of use that trigger and that stress to propel them to reach to the next level, which in my opinion is so phenomenal, exciting. I know for me in my life, I've been through some big things that at the time I didn't really see as something that would propel me to thrive, and ultimately it has. And as a result of it, I'm what I would be considered to be a much stronger person.
Can you share a little bit about how that happened for you? How did the change occur, or how did you make the most out of the stress? Or as they say,
Sure.
lemonade.
I'm happy to share that. So I almost lost my life about 5 years ago. It was a very scary moment for me. I was out on a run and I collapsed by the side of the road, and my heart rate dropped to 16 beats per minute. And the only reason I know that is because the EMT took my pulse. After a neighbor of mine had found me by the side of the road, she basically put me in her car, brought me home. I was only about 1 minute from my house. It was close. And she called the ambulance. They came within seconds, and he took my pulse, and he said her pulse was at 16. And I was rushed to the hospital, hospitalized for about a week. And it was obviously a very scary time. And at the time, all I could think about was, poor me, what's wrong with me and my heart? Oh my gosh. But now that I've had the time to really think about it for 4 or 5 years and just reflect back on that very scary experience, I feel that I'm a much more resilient person. And I'd like to share kind of what was a huge stressor, life-threatening stressor, with others in terms of how you can actually take something that's so horrific and such a stress and change it into a positive, and in a way, a demonstration of the fact that we all are human beings that continually evolve.
So in the process of taking that stressor, and I appreciate your sharing so much about your own personal experience, can you talk through the steps that you went through? Like, how did it actually happen in your mind and your emotions and your heart? How did you, as you said, reflect back on that experience? What actually shifted for you, or how did it shift?
Great question. It did take me a while, and this happened about 4.5 years ago. So, the first year or so, I didn't shift. I focused on poor me, and I was in a bad spot. I wasn't looking at it in a different way. And you know, it's hard to say how it shifted. You know, you talk about the prism of light within us. I wonder if it was just something that kind of awakened in me. And, you know, I've done a lot of, you know, work on myself. I do a lot of self-help. And I think that, you know, listening to a lot of powerful speakers and reading a lot and really looking within myself kind of helped me to change like a scary experience to a positive one and say to myself, you know what, I got through that. And I think about that, and I think about kind of other things I've been through in my life that were, you know, scary as well. And I think just focusing on the fact that I've been able to get through a challenge is a reminder to myself that I'm able to continually move forward in life and kind of propel myself when I have stress.
This is wonderful. I appreciate again you kind of diving a little deeper and talking about the different tools and resources you've used. I know in the work that we've been doing recently, you've come across some tools. Do you want to share some of your favorite tools that you're currently using with clients or that you've learned about through the work we've been doing?
Sure. Like I mentioned, The Secret Power of Stress. I love that video. It's short and to the point. I think it's really great. You know, I think like you mentioned in one of your trainings, you know, so many times with cognitive behavioral change and mind body, you know, we focus on the productive steps to managing stress, you know, handling stress, progressing from the stressor to evaluating and coping, which is definitely important to evaluate the stressor and to you know, kind of discover and develop ways to cope. But then what I found to be really exciting about your book and also the webinar is just moving to resiliency and evolving, and then finally to thriving. So like you mentioned, kind of the later steps of dealing with stress that you really don't hear about that often. And I thought it was really cutting edge, and it really resonated with me, especially because I feel, kind of back to your question, I feel that when I had my life-threatening experience, I was focusing a little more initially on, you know, kind of evaluating and coping, you know, just trying to get through. And you know, I did a good job with the coping, I think, with time, kind of coping in a healthy way. But lately, I've been focusing more on really wanting to, and I think I'm doing well at moving more toward resiliency, evolving and thriving. And that to me is really an exciting feeling. So I feel like I'm in a really good spot. And this webinar, like I said, reading that book that you wrote, which I absolutely love, Raw Coping Power, right here. It just really resonated with me.
It sounds like, thank you for that. It sounds like from the initial incident, the collapse, and when you were talking earlier, it really has been an evolution that, you know, that RET of The Secret, right? Resilience, evolve, thrive. So, yeah, it sounded like can you see that you have been evolving?
No question. I am a different person than I was 5 years ago. There's no question. And you know what's great about it? I'm so much happier. I don't have that nervousness. I have more just confidence and faith in myself.
It's so interesting because you talked earlier about anxiety being the problem that you see in your clients. So how do you now take the learning of your own evolution and apply it with your clients who have anxiety?
Great question. You know, I think I have to make sure that they have kind of the confidence in themselves first. So many times I find that people don't have the confidence that they need. And I really try and make it, as you always talk about them, you know, making sure that they understand that they have a lot, you know, they have a lot of strength. They have a lot of inner strength. And I think, you know, pointing out all the great things that they've demonstrated that they've done since I've worked with them or even before I met them, you know, just kind of encouraging them to think about the things that are remarkable about them. I have one client who really suffers from self-esteem, and we do exercises a lot that way, where I'll have her put different sticky notes on her mirror every week. You know, what's another great thing that you've done in your life? And she'll put sticky notes on her mirror, you know. And so I think just trying to encourage people to look at all the good in them, because so many times in our life, we're not really taught to look at the good in us. And that gets to the point of the triggers that you've talked about so many times, which is so fascinating to me. And in the webinar that you taught, encouraging us all to think about the triggers in our life, and you know, what are kind of the stumbling blocks and the things that kind of set us back.
Like, so a key thing that you're doing is you're inspiring confidence, you're helping them to identify their own affirmations, you're encouraging them towards self-compassion, right? And throughout, it comes back to that idea of we each have a prism of light inside of us, that when we activate that confidence and efficacy and self-compassion, we can run those triggers through our prism, right? Through and do that work, right? That we can.
Definitely.
So congratulations on
Thank you.
this, and I'm really glad we had a chance to talk today.
Thank you.